fish report. Hanging at the fish report. Hanging at the fish report. Hanging at the fish report. For your latest news in high school sports, tune in to the fish report. Don't need no bed, don't need no pull when you tune in to the fish report. Hanging at the fish report. Hanging at the fish report. You got Craig and TK and Head that D tuned in at the fish report.
Coming to you live from Studio F in Russia, Ohio. It's the Fish Report Live Show with your hosts, Craig Fissinger and Ken Francis.
Welcome, everyone, to another Fish Report Live. Glad you could join us tonight. My name's Craig Fissinger. That's Ken Francis. And back in our sound room, you know who's back there. It's TK and Heavy D. Looking forward to talking to those guys in just a little bit. And Ken, we're going to kind of go off the beaten path tonight, talk about a sport that we haven't talked about all season, and talk to a sports writer that writes some pretty good stuff, doesn't he?
Yes, we are, Craig. We're going to talk a little bowling tonight, Craig. We haven't touched base on the bowling kids yet. Obviously, bowling becoming a very popular sport. There's the Western Ohio High School Bowling League, Craig, in which Russia participates in, as well as several other MAC schools. So we're going to be talking to the coach of the Russia Raiders, and that's Dale Alt, and he's got his teams playing very well, or bowling very well this year, Craig. And then, Craig, we're going to talk to Lima news reporter Jim Naveau. Jim, one of the more famous sports beat writers in Ohio, writes very interesting articles. Craig, he covers the Reds, the Buckeyes, the Bengals, as well as high school sports up in the Lima area. Craig, we're going to talk some high school basketball, some Ohio State football, and even a little bit of golf when we talk to Jim Naveau on the phone after a while.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to both those interviews. But before we get to all that, just like we do every week, we have a weekly trivia question to get to. You asked me the question. I try to get the answer right. What do you got for me tonight?
Well, Craig, last week we talked a lot about the big Shelby County League showdown in boys basketball between the Russia Raiders and the Jackson Center Tigers, held last Friday night, Craig, at Jackson Center's gymnasium. TK will be covering a little bit on that game later on, but the Raiders came out on top on that one, Craig. So those teams have kind of put a foothold on the Shelby County League. Speaking of them two teams, Craig, the trivia question is, who was the last Shelby County League boys basketball team other than Russia or Jackson Center to win the title?
Okay.
Was it Fort Loramie, Anna, Houston, or Botkins?
Fort Loramie, Anna, Houston, or Botkins. Russia's not in there, so
No, you
besides
can't pick-
Russia.
Besides Russia or Jackson.
Okay.
You got to go back several years. Those two teams have dominated Shelby County League play the last several years.
All right, well, that's going to be a tough one because I don't remember that. So I'm going to need a little help out there. If you're watching us on the Fish Report Live page, if you scroll down, you can answer the trivia question there and check the results out. If you're watching us on NK Telco, Cable TV Channel 3, we will have those results for you at the end of the show. All right, Ken, well, let's get things started tonight. And like I said, we're going to talk about a sport we haven't talked about all season, and that is high school bowling. And the Russia Raiders, as well as others in the area, like you said, are members of what they call the West Ohio High School Bowling Conference. That's a mouthful there. We can shorten it up by calling it the WOHSBC, if you can remember that. But, yeah, like I said, they're kind of like, we like to talk about basketball and what the conference standings are. So let's go to bowling and check out what the conference standings are there.
Craig, we'll cover the boys first. Conference standings, Wapakoneta on top at 13-0, followed by several MAC schools there, St. Henry, Coldwater, Minster, Versailles. Russia, Craig, having a very fine season, sitting in 6th place there out of 17 schools, so participating very well in the league. The bowling, Craig, it's a lot like basketball. It starts in November, ends, postseason starts this is the last weekend of the year. Postseason will begin here in another week or so. So when it talks the boys and the girls, Craig, very competitive bowling in this area.
And let's check out the girls' standings, see how they are doing.
Well, Craig, the girls have 15 teams in their league, and Wapakoneta also atop the standings there, Craig. Russia down in 11th place at 3-8 on the season. But again, it's a great sport for these kids to participate in, and gives them something to do. They usually have their games on Saturdays, occasionally during the week, and so it's just it's a fun time for these kids. The parents get into the bowling games, and a lot of fun.
All right, well, one guy that knows a little bit about bowling, and definitely more than you and I do, and that's because he's the head coach of the Russia Raiders. He is Dale Alt. We're happy to have him live on the phone right now. Coach Alt, welcome to Fish Report Live, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on tonight, guys.
All right, well, listen, Ken and I wanted to talk a little bowling tonight, and I'm not scared to admit that we're a little bit out of our league when we're talking bowling here, so we'd like to start out with you explaining to our viewers and also to us what exactly consists of a match in bowling. I mean, do you just go out there and throw 3 games like we would on a Saturday night? How does it work exactly?
Yeah, it's pretty close to that. Usually, we have a 15-minute warm-up, and we'll do the national anthem, and then all the teams will get announced. We'll walk out onto the floor there. And each team then will bowl 2 regular games of bowling with 5 bowlers, and then we'll go into our 5 Baker games, and that consists of the 5 bowlers, whoever you want to pick to bowl, and each one of those bowlers will bowl 2 frames for those Baker games then.
Okay, well, listen, we just went through the boys and the girls standings, and we noticed the Russia boys are towards the top of the standings, and the girls maybe are on the bottom half of the standings right now. As we're heading into the last week of the regular season, can you give your teams a grade a little bit? How have they done this season?
Yeah, I'd have to say, we give the boys, we have to give them an A. We have 5 seniors on this team, and they've done a really nice job. A lot of those boys started in younger ages, maybe 3rd, 4th grade, and worked their way up to this senior class. And the girls, we give them a B. We lost 5 seniors from last year's team, and this year we have a lot of girls that are young. We have 1 junior and a couple sophomores and some freshmen, but they keep improving each week as we go, so we're looking for a strong team from them next year.
Coach, hi, this is Ken. Let's talk a little bit about your biggest star that you've got on the boys team, and that's Nick Bowman. Nick's comes from a bowling background. He's 4th in the conference right now in the league standings. We're going to show them on the screen right now. But again, Nick is he's got a 201 average. He's been doing very well for you all year. What makes Nick such a good bowler, and what is he capable of doing in the postseason?
Nick really works hard, and he puts a lot of effort into his bowling. There's very few times that you can go into the bowling alley up there and see him not on the lanes, throwing some balls around. So he works really hard at it, and I believe he'll do very well in the sectionals and districts. But we're going to bowl against 30 other teams, and lane changes, and depends on how the lanes are, how well he does. So we're hoping he'll do well for us, though.
Speaking of the tournament, Coach, explain how it works. We're used to basketball tournaments or baseball tournaments where you have like a sectional, a district, a regional, and then the state. Does bowling very similar, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to you guys or to the basketball team. We have a sectional and a district. We don't have no regional, and then we go right on to state after that. But there's 2 divisions. There's a 1st and 2nd division, and it's divided in North and South here in the state of Ohio.
Let's talk a little bit about the fan support. I assume parents go out to these games. They sit around the bowling alley. They watch the kids bowl. Do they get into the bowling each game, or is it a quiet atmosphere, or what partakes in during a bowling game?
It's pretty loud in there. There's every bowling center that hosts the games. We go in there and we take out all the tables and chairs, and we bring in some bleachers and set them up. And so if you got to get there about a half hour early if you want a seat. The rest it's all standing room only, and they're not very big, and you get a bunch of parents in there and get them packed. It's pretty loud in there at times.
All right, Coach, listen, one more question and we'll let you go, but I want to know if there's a dark side to bowling. Now, if when we were talking about the Super Bowl here a few weeks ago, they had the whole deflate gate going on where people were taking air out of the footballs, and I obviously you can't take air out of a bowling ball, but talk about, as a coach, are there things you need to watch for with bowling balls, or anything that can be construed as maybe a little fishy with the bowling balls?
Yeah, not so much with the bowling balls themselves. The biggest thing is a use of a foreign substance that leaves like a powdery resin or something like that. That's one of the biggest things, and no altering to the ball surface. But, we preach, and all the coaches have meetings prior to the season, and it's in the rule book that we preach, no fooling around with those bowling balls prior to bowling. So I don't think we have to worry about it too much.
I didn't know that. You can put some kind of substance on the ball. Maybe I should use that on my Saturday when I go bowling Saturday night. Maybe that'd help me from keeping it out of the gutter.
Maybe it would. Maybe, you know a guy by the name of Darren Wilson. He's probably the best bowler I know of, and maybe that's why he's good. Maybe he's putting foreign stuff on the ball. I don't know. Well, thanks, Coach. We really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be on our show with us tonight. Best of luck to your team in the postseason. Excellent job during the regular season with both the boys and the girls. And, you know, the Russia community very much appreciates the time you put in to coaching this bowling team.
Well, we appreciate you guys and appreciate the support from the community. Thanks for having us on tonight.
All right,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Coach.
All right, take care.
Yep.
All right, that was the coach of the Russia Raiders, Dale Alt. And I want to go back to the sound room and check in with the guys back there. Particularly, I want to check in with Heavy D. And I don't know if the viewers out there know it, but Heavy D and I, we go back a long ways. And actually, I got a little bit of a bowling story with me and Heavy D. My very first date with the future Mrs. Fish, I went bowling with Heavy D and a lady friend of his, and
Foxy H.
Foxy H, you're exactly right. And Heavy D, I don't know. You know, I know they didn't have bowling back when we were playing, but what do you think? If we would have been bowling back then, you think we'd have been a couple stars in West Ohio?
I'll tell you what, Craig, that time of our lives was pretty much a blur. We dated a lot of women back then, and finally we found a couple that could bowl in the triple digits. Turned out to be good catches for both of us, and we kept them. So that's what I know about that.
I don't know if I got a good bowler for a wife, but that was definitely a good thing I went on that bowling date. I know that.
That got your mind out of the gutter.
All right, well, listen, I want to check in with TK. I think we've got enough bowling stories right now. But TK, besides bowling, you got any other sports news in the wide world of high school sports?
Yeah, just want to give an update on SCAL basketball. Both boys and girls. Start out with the boys. As talked about at the top of the show, big game over the weekend, Jackson Center and Russia at Jackson. The Raiders did come out on top to take a lead in the Shelby County standings, as you can see it there on the monitor. Russia ranked 10th in the state right now at 9-1 in the league, 16-3 overall. Puts Jackson Center at 8-2 right behind them with a couple games to go. Raiders have Botkins and Fairlawn. Jackson Center has Anna and Fort Laramie yet to play here. And then the rest of the standings there, Fort Laramie at 6-4 and Anna at 5-5, kind of wrap up the top of the league. Then we got Fairlawn, Botkins, and Houston right there for the rest of the boys' standings. Go on the other side, talk a little bit of girls basketball. Over the weekend, Fort Laramie Redskins, the Lady Redskins wrapped up their second league championship in a row. They are sit right now 10-1 in the league and actually ranked 8th in the state, so doing well this year. Russia right behind them at 8-3. Then you got Anna 7-4, Jackson Center 6-5. Most everybody has about one game left as far as league play. Laramie wraps it up with Jackson Center, and our Russia Raiders finish with the Fairlawn Jets. So out of that, a couple more non-conference games, and then we're into the tournament.
Yeah, wrapping up the regular season. Girls tournament draw was last week. We'll probably get more into that next week, and then the boys tournament draw comes up this weekend, right?
Yes, it does, Craig. It'll be a real interesting draw. Division 4 held at Pickwas Garbary Gymnasium, Craig. I think it's Russia Raiders got a lock at the number 1 seed. But what happens after that and where teams place themselves in the tournament brackets will be very interesting come Sunday afternoon.
All right, well, between the four of us, we'll break down those brackets probably next week on the show. Looking forward to that. All right, that's going to do it for the first half of our show. We're going to take a quick break, but stay right there because when we come back, we're going to have that interview with Lima News sports writer Jim Naveau.
Well, I'm digging on you. I'm digging on you. What's poor boy to do? You got me acting a fool. I'm digging on you. I'm digging on you. I'm digging on you. What's poor boy to do? You got me black and blue. I'm digging on you. I've been watching from my window, and I just can't get my eyes off of you, girl. You don't know me, you don't know I'm looking. Oh, how I wish to be part of your world. Well, I'm digging on you. I'm digging on you. What's poor boy to? You got me acting a fool.
All right, welcome back to the second half of Fish Report Live. Before the break, we were covering some bowling and basketball. Now we're going to cover a little bit of everything else. And Ken, this next guy we're going to interview tonight, happy to have him on the show. Not only is he a great sports writer, but he's also a Russia native, isn't he?
Yes, he is, Craig. Jim Naveau, proud Russia alumni, Craig. Not only is he an alumni, but his parents, Claire and Jeannie Naveau, two of the nicest, most instrumental people in the history of Russia School, and not just Russia School, but the entire Russia community. Comes from a fantastic family, and you ask anybody from Russia who was instrumental in the success of Russia School from day one to today, the first name that'll come to their voice will be Claire Naveau.
All right, well,
we're proud to have his son on the show with us tonight.
Yeah, I don't think you can get any better introduction to that. So, Jim Naveau, welcome to Fish Report Live, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, guys. I didn't expect that big an introduction. But glad to be with you.
All right, well, listen, we enjoy reading all your stuff, and certainly you write about a lot of different things. Ken kind of explained at the top of the show. You had everything from high school to college to professional. And one thing I really enjoy reading is your articles about the Ohio State Buckeyes. I kind of wanted to start off with a question about a story last week that you wrote about. They had a recruit over there, have a recruit by the name of Mike Weber that they brought in. And from what I understand, Jim, he was on the fence between Michigan, Ohio State, and didn't really decide until signing day that he wanted to come to Ohio State. One of the reasons being their running backs coach. And then, the next day after signing day, the running backs coach says, "Hey, I'm leaving to take a head coaching job somewhere else." What exactly happened there, Jim? And how did Urban Meyer smooth things over with him?
Yeah, actually, it was Stan Drayton went to the Chicago Bears as an assistant coach. But Mike Weber had been, a lifelong Michigan fan, and he had verbally committed to Michigan. And then when Brady Hoke got fired, he decommitted and he committed to Ohio State. But Harbaugh came in and he was kind of wavering, and Urban and Stan Drayton, the running back coach, were on the phone with him after midnight, the early morning of the signing day, and they said they didn't know until 10 a.m. that he was definitely coming to Ohio State. And then I think probably part of it was that, his position coach wasn't going to be there, but part of it, I think too was kind of like, I compared it to somebody. I said it's like you order a new car and you get there the next day and they tell you that it's a different model and maybe a different color than the one you thought you were getting. So, maybe there was some hesitation there for that reason. But Urban's a very persuasive guy. I think he probably let it alone for a little bit, or talked to him and said, "Hey, there's reasons you were going to come to Ohio State. There's still a lot of reasons here." I don't know if it ever got to the point of the kid discussing being, allowed out of his letter of intent or not.
Well, I saw a comment too where his high school, Mike Weber's high school coach, actually said that his former player, whatever, needed re-recruited. Do you know? Did Urban ever address those comments from his high school coach?
I saw. He spoke at the Ohio Football Coaches Clinic, and Steve Hellwagon, who's covered Ohio State for a long time, got to talk to him just briefly, and he said something about he had been in contact with Weber, and I think he'd been in contact with the coach maybe also, but and that Stan Drayton had talked to Weber also, but what was said, who knows?
All right. Well, I want to ask you too about that whole situation with coaches leaving like that. We see it in football, we see it in basketball, where maybe they recruit a kid and then all of a sudden, shortly after the kid commits, then they leave. What are your thoughts on that? Is that just how that sport works, or you certainly can't blame a kid like Mike Weber for being upset at that. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's pretty tough because. A kid, once he signs that letter of intent, is committed to that school for a year unless they release him. And then if he transfers, he sits out another year where, head coaches and assistant coaches can leave whenever, even if they might have 3, 4, 5 years left on their contract. So, it seems a little out of whack. At times that, I find that as upsetting as players not getting a share of all the millions of dollars that are being made off them by the universities.
Jim, hi, this is Ken. We're going to shift gears a little bit here, and let's talk a little Lima area high school basketball. In particular, the community feeling of Xavier Simpson changing schools after he won a state championship last year on LCC, switches schools and goes over to Lima Senior. What's the feelings of the community on that? And I got to be honest with you, you know, it's one of the things that peeve of mine when these kids change schools. They're going from public schools to private schools or vice versa, either way. But how do the people of Lima feel about this?
You know, I haven't seen a lot of repercussions or a lot of criticism over it. You know, are you aware that his dad is the head coach, just got hired as the head coach
Sure.
at Lima Senior this year?
Yes.
That was, you know, that was a big part of it. I mean, I've never seen a coach who had a son who was a good player who didn't want to coach him. You know, so I was not surprised at all that he went over there. That had been the talk. But I mean, I think that, you know, there was a little, you know, talk about it. But I think, you know, the kids at Lima Senior that he played with, a lot of them had played AAU with him. You know, they're still friends with him. I mean, there were it was his birthday today, and there were a lot of kids from LCC on there wishing him happy birthday on Twitter and that sort of thing. You know, I mean, there's been a little animosity between the districts because Lima Senior is losing students in every direction to open enrollment and to vouchers to LCC, and the voucher thing seems to be the biggest irritant in that whole thing. But you know, X is, you know, he's an excellent player. He was the big reason in the second half of that state championship game last year that they were able to hold off Bellangelo St. Joseph, and he's immediately made Lima Senior a better team.
Speaking of Lima Senior, do you feel they have the talent now? I know they've got Xavier Simpson who came over from LCC. They've got the young fellow from Columbus, I think, and another one from Cincinnati who came up to join Lima Senior. Do they have the talent now to take to win a state championship?
That would be a tough. Right now, that would be a tough thing to do because they would have to get through Toledo St. John's, who's already beaten them twice this year. At some point along the way, and then in most years you bring a team from the Cleveland area over for the fourth team in that region. Also, it's a pretty tough way to get out. And you know, the kid who came in from Reynoldsburg, I think it is, Jar Ward. He was injured, and he has not been a big contributor so far. And the kid who came in from Cincinnati, both these kids originally were from Lima, you know, like in their junior high days. And the Pugsley kid who moved back from Cincinnati, he's hot and cold. You know, I've seen him where he just lights it up on threes, and then I've seen other games. So, I mean, they would have to get better to go to the state tournament. But, you know, those things happen sometimes where teams hit a hot streak in the tournament or the late part of the season.
Let's talk a little bit about an interesting story, fan favorite over there at Lima Senior, Johnny Wilson. This is a great story. You know, Johnny's a team manager. He's got cerebral palsy. You know, he gets put into the game the last 5 minutes the other night against Van Wert. And coincidentally enough, he hits two long bomb three-pointers. Give us the feel. I saw the videotape of it. It was fantastic. It was just a great thing to see. What was the atmosphere like when that happened?
Yeah, well, he had been in a couple games earlier and had, you know, gotten some open shots and had missed them, you know, and then he gets in again and he misses his first two shots Saturday night against Van Wert, and, you know, everybody's thinking, oh, you know, is he going to get one? You know, and he gets a wide open look, and he basically he only uses his left hand on his shot. You know, he kind of sits the ball on his hand with his wrist cocked back and then kind of gives it a push, and you know, after he'd missed those two, he gets an open look, he puts it up, and it's halfway there, and I was like, this is going in, and this is going to be great when this goes through the basket. You know, and it wasn't a huge crowd, but they just went crazy, and then it was like, I don't know if it was the next possession or two possessions later, he gets another one out in the corner, and you know, same thing, same exact trajectory, and you know it's going in again. You know, and he's playing it cool, and his teammates are just going nuts. You know, and they call a timeout after the second one. You know, and they're all dancing around in a circle around him. And you know, finally he shows he's pretty excited too. He said afterwards he was really nervous till he got the first one in.
It was one of those moments that you just watching it, you know, and you get goosebumps, and you can't help but smile. But it's pretty neat stuff. So. Jim, I want to change gears one more time here and talk a little golf. You had an article in the paper just the other day about the Lima City tournament and the golf tournament and how they're shortening it up, and I guess in an attempt to get more entries into that, more golfers. How exactly will shortening it up attract more golfers?
Well, they've had a drop off. 5 years ago, they had 200 players in this tournament, and last year it was down to around 130. So they thought, they had to start listening to people and see what the problem was there, why they were losing so many players. And so I think it was after the third round of last year's tournament they gave out surveys to golfers, and what came back, as the biggest reason was that the tournament's too long, that, if you've only got 2 weeks of vacation in a year, that you're basically taking half your vacation to play in the city tournament, and, that doesn't fly well with the family, and, say you've played in it for several years and maybe won your flighter or the overall championship, it's not the thrill that it once was. So they're trying this, hoping this, will get maybe 15 or 20 players back, get it up gradually. As one of the organizers told me, that this might be the new normal, because you look at golf participation around the country and it's just dropping off. I looked up some numbers when you said we might talk about this, and the National Golf Foundation, which keeps all kinds of stats on golf, said that last year there were 14 new courses opened and 157 golf courses closed.
Wow.
And that more courses have closed than opened 8 years in a row, and more golfers have quit playing than took up the game 8 years in a row. So yeah, it's not just a Lima problem, but it's a problem pretty much around the country.
Jim, we've got one last question before we let you go. Here at Fish Report, our crew is a little bit biased, but we have to all agree that Rushie's Claire C. Naveau Gymnasium is the best gymnasium, if not just in the Shelby County League, but in all of Ohio, as far as we're concerned. From a high school gym standpoint, it's a tough place to play for the opposing team. The fans are on top of the game. It's got a great atmosphere. It's a packed house about every night. A lot of the athletes that we interview from Rushie, they really don't know who Claire C. Naveau Gymnasium was, but obviously that was your father. What does Claire C. Naveau Gymnasium mean to you?
Obviously pleased and proud to see Dad's name there after 31 years after he retired. Every once in a while I'll read the church bulletin when I'm home and see, some event's going to be there and have his name on it, or in the Sydney Daily News or on your website, and I think, wow, they still use that name. But probably not a lot of people know is that, when my dad started out, he intended to go to medical school, but my grandmother was ill, and, the Depression, and he ran out of money. So, at one time, maybe his name would have been on a wing of a hospital or a clinic or something instead. But, I keep saying ever since they built it that I'm going to get in there in the summer once and just shoot around in it. I've never done that. I figure I'll do it the same way I did when I was young. I'll shoot all the time, and I won't play defense or rebound very well.
Well, you're welcome there anytime, Jim, and we'd love to have you there to cover a Raider game some night, if nothing else. So, but, we really appreciate you taking time out to be on our show with us tonight. And from all of us here in Rushie, good luck to you. We love reading your articles, and keep up the great work.
Okay. Hope I see you at the state tournament this year.
We hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you.
All right, that was Lima News writer Jim Naveau. And Ken, it kind of reminds me, a couple weeks ago we had that interview with Jerry Snodgrass, and we mentioned how we could talk to that guy forever. Yeah. Jim's one of those guys. We could talk for an hour with him.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's. One more comment I wanted to make. I was thinking back to the first half of the show when we were talking about bowling. We haven't talked about bowling a whole lot in this show. A couple interviews last year, this year, but the only other time I can remember bowling on this show is about, if you remember 4 seasons ago, we talked to then Lachlan basketball coach Paul Andrews. I swear when we did that interview, there was bowling pins cracking in the background.
So that was kind of like covering bowling that night, wasn't it? Yeah.
I just remembered that, and I thought I'd bring that story up. All right, well, listen, one more thing to get to, and that is tonight's trivia question. Real quick, what was the question, and give me my choices.
Well, Craig, who was the last Shelby County League boys basketball team to win the league title other than Rushie or Jackson Center?
And my choices were?
Fort Laramie, Anna, Houston, or Botkins.
All right. Well, listen, just my thoughts on that real quick. I know Jackson and Rushie have been tough for a couple years, but, Houston made a run to the state tournament 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. I would think that they would probably be the favorite. I'm going to go back to the guys in the sound room. Guys, what's the website saying? Any help from the viewers?
Wow, it's a dead heat, Craig, between Anna and Houston.
Anna and
Dead
Houston.
heat.
Okay. Well, Anna's had some good teams as well, but like I said, what sticks in my head was that state tournament run that Houston made not too long ago, so I think I'm going to go with Houston.
Craig, you're exactly right. You do got to go back to 2010 since the last time somebody other than Russia and Jackson Center won the league championship. So.
All right. Well, good. I got one right finally.
You got it right, and this year's going to be no different. It's going to be one of them two going to win it.
All right. Well, listen, that's going to wrap things up for us tonight. I do want to say special thanks to our guest, Russia bowling coach Dale Alt, and Lima News sports writer Jim Naveau. Ken and I and the crew, we're all going to be back again next week, same time, same place, talking a lot more sports and some tournament breakdown on the boys and girls side. So we'll see you next week.
Hanging at the fish report. 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 For your latest news in high school sports, tune in to the fish report. Don't need no bed, don't need no pull when you tune in to the fish report. Hanging at the fish